Tonight, we're going to talk about the event a lot of us did a couple months ago, and that is the North American Mycological Association Foray. And we've got two scholarship winners here who are going to present, and I'm going to start. All right, so there's all this talk, NAMA, NAMA, NAMA. So what is NAMA? It is the North American Mycological Association, which is, some people will say it's the national club, but it's truly, because it's North America, it's the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It is a nonprofit with over 100 affiliated clubs, and MMS is one of the affiliated clubs. And currently there's about 3,000 members. It's committed to the promotion of scientific and educational activities and protecting natural areas for biological integrity. They advocate the sustainable use of mushrooms as a resource and endorse responsible mushroom collecting. Let's see, where's the next button? There we go. Again, it is a nonprofit. It was founded originally as a people-to-people committee on fungi in 1959 by Harry S. Knighton, who lived in Portsmouth, Ohio. He was the founder and the first chairman. But very quickly, people saw the need for an independent organization devoted to amateur mycology. So that's kind of a key piece here, that it's amateur mycologists. There's the Mycological Society of America, which is the professional association, but a lot like MMS, while we have professional mycologists in our club, we have professional mycologists who present to us and advise us. We're a bunch of amateurs, and we're contributing to science by way of our interest in mycology. The newsletter is called the Mycophile, and that first came out in 1960. And in 1976, they started a toxicology committee. I would urge you to check out the website. You don't have to be a member to look at all of the resources, and all of the newsletters are available online, whether you are a member or not. Now, this is a lot of info on one slide, but mostly I was trying to do a quick recap of some of the past forays and where they were. And I wanted to capture all the way down here to Lafayette, Louisiana, only because that was the first foray I ever went on. And it seemed to me, if I was going to go someplace that had a completely different terrain, a completely different habitat, how would I even know where to go? And because the local clubs were hosting it and they take you out on forays, you're sort of getting an invitation to their hunting grounds. So by way of the forays that they take you on with, on that one at the time, it was school buses. Sometimes they do carpools and stuff, but it's just a really neat way to see a different area. And a lot of times it's at a different time of the year. So like some of the ones, I think this Scotts Valley one, that was the Fungus Federation of Santa Cruz. That was in December because that's their mushroom season. And here's 2017 in Cable, Wisconsin, and our club helped support that foray. If you go to the NAMA site, it'll show in a map view where all the different forays are. And there's also a link to the voucher collection project, and you can see what mushrooms were collected on all those different forays. And I'm going to quickly get to this next slide. Just to show you, here's where we were this year. We were in what I'd call southern Vermont, even though some people teased me and said Vermont's not large enough to have a north and a south. But it's an area of the country that I haven't ever been in. So lots of times that's sort of a impetus for me to go on the foray too, is I want to see what it looks like, and I want to see what else is around there. And it's kind of my excuse every year for a vacation. And NAMA sort of picks for me where I might want to go. So I picked a travel buddy in the MMS. Jean and I decided to travel together, and we flew into Hartford, Connecticut. And instead of heading north to go up to the Foray in Vermont, we came a day early, and instead we headed south about 45 minutes and decided to see the Atlantic Ocean. The next day we headed north, and I was surprised, and I know a lot of people say this, but it was only 3 hours from Connecticut all the way up to Vermont. So we traveled all the way through the state of Massachusetts. And Jean is such a proficient traveler. She did a lot of research ahead of time. And we stopped at a place called the Magic Wings Butterfly Garden. And if this video will play, it was just this, it truly was this magical little stop that we just happened to be like, you know what, we're in the area, why not check it out? So I'm gonna just give you guys a quick peek at that, how many butterflies there were. We actually had to go through an airlock with mirrors all around you to leave the butterfly habitat, just in case there was still some sitting on you and you didn't notice. But like I said, within a few hours then, we were up at the Potash Hill campus, which is where the Foray was held. Here's a couple, the main building on the campus where the specimens were dropped off. And you can see that's one of the needs of the NAMA Foray, is to have a place for specimens to be dropped off. And this will be the inside view of that. And you'll see in a minute that one of the goals of each NAMA Foray is we're cataloging specimens that are found in that area. So it's kind of a snapshot of time and place, that, you know, what was found in Vermont in 2025. And it happened to be a really dry year there. They still found hundreds and hundreds of species, but they were mostly very small species instead of the big fleshy fungi that we were finding at home because of our wet season. So just seeing what was found in the catalog kind of gives us a clue to what the climate was like at that time and what was happening in that area. I happen to be on the board or on a committee for NAMA, and I am the marketing chair. So I help get the shirts made. Here I am trying to sell last year's shirt. So I attended as staff and probably had a bit different experience than the people you're going to hear from in a little bit. This was the NAMA, the 2025 winning logo. And I'm showing this because besides the individual club scholarships, there's a whole bunch of ways to get a scholarship to NAMA. Every year there's a logo contest, so you can submit your idea in draftable art that would be usable on a t-shirt, and the winner gets a free ticket to NAMA. If you check out the social media, you will be up to date on all of the different things coming out. They did a contest that was called the Chopped Style Contest, and that was the culinary committee. And the best recipe won also a trip to NAMA. The DNA group does a scholarship. And then this year they had a lot of different affiliate club scholarships, of which we got one. And that was by way of them saying, we're going to send 10 people, all clubs who are interested, send us your name and say, I'm interested. They literally drew names from a hat, and wow, we got one this year. So yeah, if you follow Instagram or Facebook, it's North American Myco. Anytime there's a contest, I think right now there's a regional foray that'll be happening in British Columbia, and they have a photo contest. I think there's still, or not a photo contest, sorry, a logo contest, and there's still time to enter that. So here is our lovely Adele, who has been traveling to the NAMA Forays for many, many years, and she is not just like I say that I'm staff. I didn't do a tenth of what she did. She day and night catalogs all of the mushrooms that are found. And that is the scientific list that goes to the Chicago herbarium for study and for saving for posterity. And this is Oliver, who is also our Instagram manager. So this is the key thing about NAMA, the kind of the scientific piece of it. So all of the specimens that we collect every year get stored in the Field Museum in Chicago as a part of the voucher collection program. Just like MMS tracks what we find on our forays in the summer, NAMA has an iNaturalist project. So you could go to iNaturalist and look up NAMA, and you could see each year at the different forays what kind of things they were finding. But the bigger piece of this is the specimens, like it says here, one specimen, the voucher specimen of each unique species is identified, photographed, recorded, and after being displayed for all of us to see, is dried and sent into the herbarium at the Field Museum of History. So over the years, there's thousands of specimens that have been saved there. This is what a typical evening at NAMA looks like. Besides trying to decide what you're going to do during the day, there's many lectures, there's many forays, there's workshops, but every evening there is a keynote. So that would be a Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, 3 different keynote speakers. They also have a photo contest, and they showed the art contest and showed the winners that evening and talked about other upcoming events. The other piece that I did with Kristen Blizzard was have a linoleum printing class. So this is just a small class. It's mildly mushroom related, but lots of people ended up kind of tracing and carving their favorite mushroom. And the most fun thing about this class was that everybody started printing on their clothes, and lots of people brought their shirts, and they're like, I'm just gonna, print on the back of my NAMA shirt or my MMS shirt. And by the time the class was over, people were so inspired, they were printing on the clothes on their body, even though I told them it's gonna take a while for the ink to dry. But it's a fun way to kind of, show your spirit, or, wear your mushroom love. I thought this was just a really beautiful picture. This is, I happened to see Presley having his morning coffee on the grounds of the campus. This was just an especially beautiful campus to be on. We had 350 attendees, which is a big group to host. It's a big group to have enough bedding for, and a big group to get fed 3 meals a day. So I thought this was just a lovely campus to be on. And you could almost think that you're, in Minnesota, maybe along the St. Croix River or something, until you look out and realize that there was some elevation, and we got to do some ups and downs and have some nice vistas. We were a little early for New England colors changing, but I still just thought it was a really beautiful area. The other thing I did was help out with a cooking demo. And it actually, if I could have picked anything I wanted to do on the foray, this would have been the thing I wanted to do. Melanie Kahn, I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, she came and visited us. She wrote Mason Goes Mushrooming. And she and Eugenia Bone and Gordon Walker were doing an afternoon cooking demo at her, she's has her parents' original farmstead there. And again, it was just a beautiful location. Like when I look at this picture with the person sitting with their little straw hat on it, it almost looks like we went back in time. But it was really fun. And this is for MMS, I try to organize a lot of our speakers for the year. And right away, I'm like, man, I'd love to have Gordon Walker as a speaker. I'd love to have Eugenia Bone as a speaker. And it's so much easier to reach out to someone after you've seen them speak and you've talked to them. And so you can reach out to them and say, hey, do you remember me? I met you at NAMA. I thought this was fascinating. Melanie kept saying, oh, I've got my bacon that I can cook up. So I'm going to cook up some of my bacon. And I thought, gosh, does she have pigs or what is that? But I think the my bacon is the myco bacon. And this is a product that is made from mycelium. So this is sliced myceliated. I don't know what the substrate is, and then it's has smoke flavor. and it also had coconut oil so that it would fry up. And I was impressed with it. I was really impressed with the vegan bacon, and it was just a fun little introduction. So they were doing BLTs with myco bacon. And MMS usually represents really well at NAMA, even something when it's across the whole country. We get a good group of people showing up. Sometimes I've heard people say, "Oh, you Minnesota club are good travelers." But I think we just have a short season, and we love to see what it's like in other places and hunt mushrooms. Glenn Keiser is one of the first people I met in the MMS club on a foray, and he actually lives in New Hampshire now. So it was just really fun to get to reconnect with him after a bunch of years. Us mushroom people stick together, and I would say that I have met people at NAMA Forays that I'm still in contact with from around the country. So it's really nice connections. And one of those connections in our club and a person who loved to go to the NAMA Forays was Marek Scholarship. And unfortunately, we lost him in 2017, and he wasn't able to attend the cable foray that year like he wanted to. So this whole Marek Scholarship is in honor of Marek, and it's carrying on his love of doing just that, of traveling around, meeting other mushroom enthusiasts, enjoying food and beverage together, looking at different mushrooms and learning about them together. And I just wanted you guys to get to see a picture of him and kind of keep his memory alive by talking about him. And so Courtney Keiser tonight is our 2025 Marek Scholarship Scholarship recipient, and she's going to be talking to you next. And before I switch it over to her, I'm also going to introduce you to Presley Martin, who is our NAMA Affiliate Club Scholarship recipient this year. So thank you all for joining. I can't wait to hear about Courtney and Presley's experiences, because I feel like there's probably a lot of stuff that happened in NAMA that I didn't see, and I can't wait to see what other people did.
So, like Kathy said, I'm Courtney. I'm going to be talking to you all tonight about my experience at NAMA. So here is a picture of the Potash Hill campus that we got to stay at this summer. It's a repurposed college campus, so it gave very fun, like summer camp vibes going it to NAMA, which I really loved because I love camping and hiking and being outside. So that was something that was pretty cool. But again, before I go too much into my experience there, I also wanted to give up my background on why I attended NAMA. I was the recipient of the Marek Scholarship Scholarship this year. How I applied for this scholarship, I wrote an essay where I talked about my involvement with the MMS and my passion for mushrooms and mycology, and then kind of talked about how attending NAMA would benefit my learning and how I could bring that back to the MMS. Put that scholarship together, and I think in March is when that was due. So if you guys are interested in attending NAMA, which hopefully I will inspire you to attend this next foray, you can look out for that application. And I've also made a QR code in the bottom right of the screen to scan that will take you to the website where you can get this information there too. I just wanted to I'm very thankful that I was selected to attend NAMAs this year. It was a wonderful experience, and this is a wonderful scholarship. So again, before I get too much in depth, I wanted to give a little background on myself. It's Courtney. My pronouns are she, her. My mushroom journey started back in 2020. That was my pandemic hobby. And I started off looking for just morels, and we all know that that's a very short season. And then after that, I was like, what's the next mushroom I could find? And that was when I lived in Nebraska. And in 2022, I moved up here to Minneapolis for my job, and I joined the MMS because when I was in Nebraska, there was no mycological society group. I was kind of off on my own. So as soon as I moved here and I found out that there was a group of like-minded individuals, I was like, heck yes, sign me up for that. And since joining the group, I've assisted with some forays here and there, just offering some of my knowledge of mushroom identification. I've attended a bunch of different of the camping forays, which I highly suggest you attend if you haven't. They are an absolute blast. You make a lot of really cool friends. It's all day looking for mushrooms. It's a wonderful time. And then I've been trying to get more into helping teach mushroom ID classes, which I was able to help this last weekend, which that was really fun. And so my goal tonight is just kind of to inspire you all to think of new ways to engage with fungi. When I started off, I was just looking for edible mushrooms. And the more I learned about mushrooms, the more I was intrigued with how they interact with our environment, how different environments grow different types of mushrooms, the different ecosystems that different mushrooms grow in, how I can make crafts with mushrooms, different fun ways to cook, and it spirals and expands. And so I'm hoping to maybe share some new information with you and inspire you to think of different ways that fungi interact with the world, and then also hopefully encourage you to attend NAMA. So I drove out to Vermont, and I got us, well, my partner and I went out together, and I got us lost. So we did a couple different stops on the way out there. So we went to the Great Sand Dunes in Illinois, and then Cuyahoga National Park in Ohio. And then we stayed up in the Adirondacks for a few days to hike and explore. And then our way back from the Adirondacks down to NAMA, which should have been, I think it was like a 2.5 hour drive. It ended up being perhaps a 5 hour drive, because even with modern technology, I apparently gave him the wrong directions. And so we got there a little late, but that was fine. We ended up getting there. Everything was fine. But we rolled up, got checked in, got to see, Kathy showed the auditorium where all of the mushroom specimens were going to be placed in there. And it was a big open room, and I was excited to see it filled with mushrooms. We checked into our kind of dorm area, which I thought was pretty fun. Again, gave very camping cabin vibes, for our quarters to stay, very nice and clean looking. And that night, and the food that they served was most excellent. Any dietary restrictions were well accommodated. Like, anyone could eat a very good meal. They were all fantastic. The first night, Dr. Rick Vanderpool gave a talk on mushrooming habitats of central New England. And his talk was the one that really resonated with me, because like I was saying, I'm looking for edible mushrooms, and I'm trying to kind of expand my knowledge and think about the ecosystems that these mushrooms are in, and like what kind of trees are in these areas, like what kind of soils are there, like how does elevation change impact these things. And that is all the things that Rick talked about, and I'm going to talk about, which hopefully, I know it's not necessarily mushroom themed, and I kind of went a little in depth on it, but hopefully this just gives you an idea of things to think about when you are looking for mushrooms. So the types of soil. This is something I never really even thought about much at all. I'm not sure why I never did, but I thought this was pretty cool. So there's different types of soils. There's 12 US soil orders. Each of these ones have different physical, chemical, and biological properties that differentiate them. Here on the right, we've got a soil map of Vermont. There are two main soils. So here we were down in the southeast side of Vermont, where we had the spotted soils. And if I'm pronouncing these wrong, that's all right. I pronounce mushrooms wrong too, so oops. The spotted soils, this soil is acidic with a pH between 4 and 5.5. It's very nutrient poor. So in these soils, you're going to see a lot of pines and firs that make that kind of soil environment work. And the layers of these soils, of this specific soil, is very colorful. So on the top of it, you've got a very rich organic top from like all the pine needles and decomposing leaves and organic matter. And then below that, you have a gray nutrient depleted soil. And that's because you've got acidic rain, and then your pine needles are very acidic, and that kind of washes away the nutrients from that layer. And then below that layer, there's a nutrient-rich layer, and then below that is a sandy bottom layer. And then the other soil type that they have is the inceptisoils, and those are young soils. They're very fresh, and they're starting to grow, and there's not many layers or differentiating layers of that soil. And in that, there's like rocks and stones mixed in there. So that's the main type of soil that we see. Or no, just kidding. That's not the main type. The Incepta soil is the main one you can see from the picture on the right. So why does this matter? So trying to understand the different soil types and what mushrooms thrive in these types of soils. So mushrooms that really like these soils in Vermont are the chanterelles, russulas, lacteris, amanitas, and the Courtneria species. And so then I wanted to pop up a soil map of Minnesota because I was like, what kind of soils do we have here? And so our Incepta soils are all up here in the northeast side of the state, which is an area I have yet to really explore that much in. So I'm very excited for next season to work my way up there and see what kind of mushrooms like to thrive up in that kind of environment. And then adjacent to the soils are the types of trees. So in Vermont, they had a lot of spruce, fir, northern hardwood region trees. So these trees they found at cooler, higher elevations. The mixed forest type where red spruce and balsam fir grow alongside different types of hardwoods like sugar maples, yellow birch, and American beech. And then they also had northern hardwood regions where a significant portion of which is a significant portion of the state's forest. And then in addition to those hardwoods that I was talking about on the left, they had red oaks, white ash, basswood, and eastern hemlock. And so I'm saying all these tree names. I know like this is an area that I'm really trying to get better at my tree identification. I feel like I've got oaks and maples, and sometimes that's as far as it goes. So trying to really take some time to study the types of trees that are in the environments that we're foraging in will be very helpful with identifying what kind of mushrooms have associations with these mushrooms, with these trees. And then another thing I feel like I've taken for granted as being someone who's lived in the Midwest, different trees grow at different elevations, which sounds kind of intuitive, but it's something that I honestly didn't really think much about just because I've lived in a fairly flat region. So trees are a function of the elevation. The higher you up, the more acidic your soil is going to be. You're going to have trees that are going to need to be able to tolerate that acidic soil. In Marlboro, the height they were at was about 1,700 feet above sea level. The town's elevation itself ranged between 700 and 2,400 feet. And then in the state of Vermont, you have a drastic elevation change from 95 feet up to about 4,400 feet. And then in comparison, looking at in Minnesota, we go from 600 feet all the way up to 2,300-ish feet at Eagle Mountain. And so then over here, this just shows you the distribution of trees as a function of the elevation, starting up at the top, which has the high elevation. We have our balsam fir, our red spruce, heart-leaved birch, yellow birch, sugar maple, and as I go down the list, we're going down into lower elevation. And an area that I really got to see that drastically was on one of the forays to Mount Snow, which I'll talk a little bit about later, but this picture was just showing like closer to the top, I'm getting more of my firs and spruces, and then you can see as you're going down the mountain a very drastic change in the types of trees that were in that environment, which that was cool to see. Okay, and like Kathy said, it was kind of dry, not actually very dry. So the mushrooming, we had to really look for the small, tiny little mushrooms. So I learned about looking at microhabitats, which that's not something I had always done, as someone who liked to focus exclusively on edible mushrooms. But as I've started to look under logs and leaves and looking for the smaller mushrooms, the more exciting it got because there are so many different mushrooms in these places. And I highly encourage you to just take some time to go slower and turn over some logs and try to look for them. So what you're looking for, or some areas to look for these smaller mushrooms, are mossy beds upon fallen logs, mossy tree boles of large hardwoods, under hemlock needle duff or pine needle duff, small hardwood branches, or large bark plates on ancient trees. Note any changes in the soil moisture. So when we were hiking down Mount Snow, we were looking for seeps to try to find some of these small mushrooms, and then scanning very slowly. And then something that I forgot to bring that a lot of other people did was like a little tackle box to put small fungi in to keep them from getting smushed. That was a really cool idea and something that I will be doing moving forward. Okay, so then every evening there's a fun social planned, and you have to attend them because that is a wonderful opportunity for you to, because throughout the day, you're getting bombarded with there's forays to go on, there's workshops to attend, and it's just jam-packed. It's back to back. You're kind of running around trying to figure out what you're going to do next. The evening socials are kind of a slow down a little bit, get to talk to people, mingle around. The first night, there was a sampling station of different mushroom foods. One night we had a mixology night where the culinary team had different liquors flavored with mushroom infusions. One night they taught contra dancing, and then a couple of the evenings they had UV hikes with Alan Rockefeller, which those were pretty cool. We had to look very hard to find the mushrooms on those hikes because, again, it was very dry. We did find one. I didn't get to identify that one. It got scooped up and taken off to the ID table, but we did get to see one. So that was fun. All right. And here's Mount Snow. It was fun. We got to take the ski lift up to the top of that mountain, and we started at the top and slowly worked our way down, trying to find those seeps to find any of those small mushrooms. It was a little sad because a lot of the people who were from the area had told us that we're sorry to disappoint you. There's not going to be many good mushrooms, but usually this is a fantastic ecosystem for finding tons of different mushrooms like chanterelles, black trumpets, all these different kinds. So don't judge us based on your experience this time. But it was still a fun hike down. It was the diverse trees, very hilly. I still enjoyed it a lot. It was a fun scavenge to try to find a lot of those little small mushrooms. And once we've collected our specimens after each foray, you get to sit down and ID them at the ID tables, which is taking the time to actually ID them after you find them is something that I'm kind of bad at. I like to bring my specimens home and then I keep them in their bags, and then I clean up my edibles and I forget about my non-edibles that I need to identify. So having this dedicated time to just sit down and try to identify these. There's lots of people around you at the tables that you can ask for help. The foray leader is also around so they can help you identify your mushrooms, and there's lots of good resources. So while it can seem kind of overwhelming if you found a mushroom, you have no idea what it is, there are people there that will help you figure out what it is. And so because it was dry, so the first day that I went on the foray to Mount Snow, and the next day I strategized and I was like, I'm going to go to a bunch of lectures because I want to learn some new things about different mushrooms. And so there were 2 talks that I got to go to, one by Noah Siegel that he talked about boletes in New England, and then one by Shannon Adams, who talked about Courtneria species in New England. And the fun thing, but some key highlights that I learned from Noah are just there's quite a diversity of edible mushrooms, edible boletes. And then boletes in one region can look significantly different than boletes in a different region. So you just have to be very careful when you're going to a new place, when you are trying to identify like a king bolete. Like they look different in Minnesota versus what they look like in Colorado. And one of the mushrooms that I'm interested in finding that's here in Minnesota is Tylophilus alboter. I might be saying that wrong, but that's this guy up here. I thought that was just a really pretty bolete. I liked that it was black. I don't know if I've ever seen, kind of has like a velvety fuzzy look to it. I thought he was just really cool looking. So that's kind of a new bucket list bolete that I'm interested in finding. And then Shannon inspired me to want to study Courtneria species. I guess I didn't realize that people kind of shy away from them because they're a very tricky species to identify. But I thought that was cool that she kind of was tackling that and was excited about the challenge of trying to identify these different mushrooms. There's 1,000 species identified with over 5,000 that still need to be. And she had made these really cool, these were not real mushrooms. She had made these out of, I can't remember what she made them out of, but she had made them earlier and brought them to her presentation. And she was talking about giving a workshop next year on how to make these. So I had written that down because I wanted her to teach me how to make those. And then I also learned that there's a lot of pretty purple Courtnerius mushrooms and that those excite me. I think those are really pretty. It's fun when you can see a very vibrant colored mushroom in the wild. And so I wrote down some information on identifying Courtneria species in general, and then just I guess I forgot to write down which these species are, but they all look very similar, and there's 4 different species of Courtnerius mushrooms down here, which I think is pretty kind of gives insight into how hard it could be to differentiate different Courtneria species. So typical morphological features of this species, they have a veil and a cortina, and they're terrestrial, ectomycorrhizal, and they all have this rusty brown spore deposit, which can make it kind of hard to differentiate different species when they all have that. And then their spores are often ornamented. Another thing that I got to participate in, I got to do a different cooking workshop than what Kathy did. I went to this workshop with Spike and Chad. I know Chad came to the MMS earlier this year and talked about his cooking book. Spike is on the NAMA culinary committee. So what they were going to do is take us for a hike through the woods to try to find some edible mushrooms. But unfortunately, Spike had already gone on that hike earlier that day, and he told us there were no mushrooms. It was too dry. So instead, we got to walk around to the different tables, and we talked about the different mushrooms at the table and which ones could be edible, and different ways that Spike and Chad have cooked these mushrooms, giving us insight into, if you're trying a new mushroom, just try a little bit of it to make sure that you don't have a bad reaction with it, and some tips and tricks with cooking with these mushrooms. And then after we walked around the tables, they had set up a cooking demo where they cooked different mushrooms for us. I got to try the beef steak fungus, which had been on my list of ones to try to find here in Minnesota, which I've still yet to do. But that's this picture in the top right corner. It looks like a marbled meat. It was just wild seeing that. And then so Chad and Spike cooked us some tacos with lion's mane, hen of the woods, and pioppino and oyster mushrooms, which ended up being absolutely delicious. Chad also made some black trumpet jam that he brought and shared with us. And then from that demo, I'm really excited to try to make my own lemon lion's mane tacos. And then I bought Chad's book, which maybe some of you guys are familiar with that already, but I'm really excited to cook the maitake and broccoli pierogi from his book. And then on the last day, I got to do a workshop to learn how to inoculate oak logs to grow shiitake mushrooms. And so this was really fun. We got to take out some drills and drill a bunch of holes into the logs. And then we took the inoculation tool and you kind of just pound it into a bag of grain spawn, and then you can tap on the top of the tool over the hole that you drilled, and it kind of just shoots the grain spawn on into the log, and you fill all those holes up, and then you take a wax dauber and you cover those holes to seal those off. That was kind of the gist of it. You can start those logs to fruit in the springtime. We're told to soak them in water for about 18 hours at a temp that's about 10 degrees cooler than the air, and then we can set them outside, and they should fruit about for 4 years, a couple of different times each year. And that was a pretty cool class. And with that, that was my NAMA experience. Here are just some pictures of some of the travels that I did on the way out there. And then again, me with Shannon. I just really enjoyed her lecture. It was just a very inspiring one to get me out to learn more Courtneria species. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Presley.
All right. So yeah, thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Kathy. My name's Presley Martin, and I know probably a lot of you don't really haven't met me. I did join the MMS in 2020. I think like you, Courtney, I was also a COVID hobby, getting into mushrooms, but it had been something I wanted to do for quite a while. So, yep. So this is me. I'm an artist. I work at a progressive art studio during the day, and also make my own art, which some of you may have seen. I've been at the last couple potluck events and sharing some of my mushroom brushes or mushroom markers. Um, so yeah, and again, hearing Courtney speak just really drove home how much there was to do at the NAMA Foray and how we were both there, but I don't think we did anything, had any overlap except maybe the UV Foray. Um, so it was a really great experience, and I just wanted to thank everyone in the MMS and NAMA that make these events happen. It's really incredible, and I'm very grateful for being able to attend. You may be heard already, but it was very dry. And when I got there, I heard quite a bit of, you should have been here last year. So here's our drought monitor map from the week in September that we were there. So we were right over here, right on the border of moderate and severe drought. So that was what we were at. So when I arrived and checked into my dorm, I was greeted by this sign on the dorm door. We weren't afflicted by plagues of gnats, frogs, or skunks. But then if you notice down here on this blue tape that someone added bears and porcupines, I think it was on one of the forays that someone did, there was a bear spotting. Not one that I was on. But there was excuse me, not a raccoon, a porcupine in the tree that was on the campus of Potash Hill that caused quite a commotion. It was way up in the tree and inspired me to learn a little bit more about porcupines, which I realized I didn't really know much about. They are our second largest North American rodent after the beaver. I had no idea. And they do actually spend quite a bit of their life up in trees. So that was an exciting moment. Never saw a porcupine in a tree before. So the day I arrived, there was a couple afternoon forays. This was the beginner foray, and we were just on the grounds of Potash Hill campus, just within, not more than half a mile of the campus. One of the cool finds was this Lectarius in the Russulaceae family, and it has some nice color to it. But the really cool thing was that the very small, immature versions of this mushroom are a totally different color. They're this bluish green color, which I thought that was really cool. It's something that I'd never seen before. So the next day on Friday was the workshop that I was probably most looking forward to, since I am an artist. This was the paper making with mushrooms with Roberta Trenton, who is originally from Italy, but she now lives in Brooklyn, New York. So this is Roberta here demonstrating the paper making for us. So Roberta, she she cited Miriam Rice as an inspiration for her. So Miriam was an artist in the 60s and 70s. She kind of pioneered a lot of dyeing with mushrooms out in California, and she was seeing a lot of leftover mushroom bits in her dye pots, and she started making paper with the mushrooms. Um, so this actually, if this book, I've looked it up. It's quite hard to come by. I mean, you can buy it online, but none of the local libraries around here seem to have it. So if anyone has a copy of this book, I would be interested in borrowing it. Um, so this was Roberta's table at the workshop with a bunch of different examples. Some of the mushrooms that she uses for paper up in the right-hand corner here. And then just different samples of paper and little things that she's experimented with and made with the mushroom paper. Which includes these little like origami little sculptures that she's made. So one of the interesting things about the mushroom paper is that it's flexible when it's still wet. So you can fold it into these origami shapes when it's still wet, but once it dries out, it is kind of brittle, and it will. I've had a couple of the pieces that I made break when you fold it after it's dried out. So it really is a kind of a totally different thing than paper from plants. So here we are making our paper at the workshop. So the way she did it was would just take the whole mushroom and blend it up. So just using a regular household blender, blend up the mushroom, and then we were using these like 5x7 mold and decal paper making screens. So you blend up the mushroom and then mix it with a bunch of water, and then you basically pull your screen through the vat of water to collect your mushroom on the screen surface. And then these down here in the foreground are two pieces of felt. So you after you get your mushroom mix on the screen, you flip it over and press the water out, and then transfer it to the felt. So here is a bunch of the papers that we made drying on the cardboard. And since it was so sunny and dry, these were actually pretty much dried and ready to go by later that day. We thought that they were going to be we thought it was going to be overnight to let them dry, but they actually dried pretty quickly. So Roberta had made a really cool little booklet of samples of paper made from different kinds of mushrooms. The cinnabar polypore and the Ganoderma suge, hemlock reishi, birch polypore, Fomitopsis. That was the main one that we used in the workshop, and I think it's one of the better ones for paper, just because I think you can find it in the quantities that you're going to need for making paper. And also it's a nice white color. On the right here is the Ganoderma with some flax fiber. So if you mix in some plant fiber to it, it does add to the strength of it. And I don't know if you can tell, but a lot of these papers, they're quite rough, so they have really interesting textures. Here's a Dryad saddle paper, which she said is actually a little bit more like crispier than some of the other papers. And then on the right, we've got the birch polypore with some flax fiber. This one was cool. This was some with the blue stained fungus added to it. So it made this nice blue-gray color. And this was a sample that she had from shiitake mushroom, which doesn't make great paper, but it was kind of interesting. It's quite brittle. You can see the chunks broken off of it there. So after the paper making workshop that afternoon, I went on the lower stream trail Foray, which was on the Potash Hill campus grounds, but it was a little ways away, so we had to walk down a dirt road about half a mile or so to get to the trail. So this was one of the cool non-mushroom finds on that Foray. This is a red eft. It's the juvenile stage of the eastern salamander. One of the reasons that I was excited to go to Vermont to attend this Foray was that growing up, I got to spend summers in New Hampshire, actually only about 50 miles from where we were in Vermont. So I didn't have many memories of mushrooms as a kid in New Hampshire. So I was curious to see to go back and revisit the landscape and see see what kind of mushrooms were there. But I do remember these red Fs from when I was a kid. They were always fun to find. A mushroom I found on that Foray that I'd actually never found before was this Dyer's polypore. This one was quite large. I'd say, I don't know, it was probably about 10 or 12 inches across. And there was actually several in the area. This was growing in a mostly hemlock and pine, like white pine area. And the cool thing about this was that right after I found it, I was by myself, and then I reconnected with a few other people on the Foray. And right away, someone identified it for me because I didn't know what it was at first. And then, he immediately said, "Oh, well, it's too old. It's too old to die with." But then a woman who was right next to him was like, "Well, actually, it's probably not." And then, so on the walk back, I got to a little crash course about all the different colors that you can get from this mushroom. Apparently, depending on what kind of mordant you use, you can get anything from green all the way to yellows and reds. And according to her, this one was probably not actually too old to use for dyeing. So when I got back to my dorm, I did chop some up and poured some boiling water over it to see what kind of colors would come out. And I think, there was some color. It maybe was a little too old, but actually, so one thing, so that night I went on the UV Foray, and it turns out that the pigment in the Dyer's polypore is fluorescent. So I think from cutting it up, I still had some on my hands, and I think that's why my fingers are kind of fluorescing here in the UV Foray. One interesting thing I learned on the UV Foray was that getting your UV flashlight, you actually should be getting a 365 nanometer UV flashlight. We actually already had a UV flashlight at home that I brought with me, but it turns out it was the 390 395 nanometer, which would still work, but you can see from this example here that if you're using the 365, all the fluorescent stuff shows up much better than if you have the 395 nanometer. So that was quite interesting, and a little tidbit that I learned. Yeah, so like Courtney mentioned, not a lot of mushrooms, maybe just that one mushroom found on the foray, but there was some cool stuff to see fluorescing, including this millipede, which was very fluorescent and cool. And part of it too was a little crash course in getting your phone to take a good photo in these conditions, which was not easy. So let's see, the next day, the morning foray that I went on was the teeny tiny foray, which actually turned out to be perfect for the conditions in Vermont. So we actually went on the same trail as the previous foray before, the lower stream trail. And so I think this is the lower stream. I'm not sure, but it looks like there was a former beaver dam here that I don't know if it got knocked out or it's just old, but the area on the left here was kind of like a sphagnum bog, which was cool to see that. But actually, one of the coolest things I thought that we found on this foray was not a mushroom, but this sundew plant that was right on the edge of the water. Something that I'd never seen before. There was a lot of interesting little factoids that got thrown out, at the various lectures and things. Right at the beginning, that first foray that I went on actually had a little lecture to start us off on the beginner foray. And something that was mentioned there was that in Mexico, they actually prefer the Russula brevipees, which is the mushroom that gets taken over to become the lobster mushroom. But apparently they actually prefer the unlobsterized version. And according to Jan Sommer, who was leading this foray, he said that they taste really pretty much the same. So that's something that I am curious to try next year. So at the beginning, I mentioned that I'm an artist, and I've been at the past couple potlucks with my mushroom markers. So here's my mushroom markers, and so what these are slices of birch polypore that when I was first learning about the mushroom, I learned that people used to use them as ink blotters. And so being an artist, I'm like kind of intrigued by that. I was like, oh, I need to try it using it with ink. And it turns out that they are really great drawing tools. So now I'm making these mushroom markers. So these are slices of the birch polypore and attached to these beaver chewed sticks. And I did bring some of these with me to Vermont because I was excited to tell people about what I was doing, but I wasn't quite sure exactly how, because I wasn't formally, presenting them in any way. So at the papermaking workshop, right at the end, I did bring them out and showed them to people. And there were several people that were really excited by it, including someone from the New York Mycological Club who's a filmmaker. And we actually have already done a little collaboration and made a film in a week, which was kind of blew my mind because I never made a film before, and this was over a long distance. So she's in New York, and came back to Minnesota, and Ginger, my wife, was the cinematographer with just our phone, but we were able to put together this movie, which is actually about 10 minutes long, and it was shown, Maya showed it in New York last weekend. They had their, I think it was their third annual Fungi Fest in New York. So that was exciting to meet other like-minded creative people at the Foray. It wasn't just all science stuff. And actually, the New York Mycological Club is really interesting. They have a really interesting history. Turns out it was founded by John Cage, the experimental composer, back in 1962. So that's something I had no idea about. So they have a particularly creative history with their club. And I think I'll end here. This was just like during lunch, I think, one day. So these are tables out in front of the dining hall, so you could eat your meal in the dining hall, or you could bring it outside to the picnic tables. But I noticed I was sitting behind this gentleman with this shirt, and I don't know if you can read the text on it, but it says, "You should just give up whatever job you have and just quit. Just stop now and devote the rest of your life to mushrooms." And that's a quote from Gary Linkoff, who's now actually wasn't really known to me at the time. And then, inspired by this quote, I looked it up, found out that, he wrote the Audubon Guide to North American Mushrooms, is really, kind of famous in the mushroom community. He was NAMA president, I think, for like 9 years. He lived in New York. He taught classes at the New York Botanic Garden for 40 years. He was one of the co-founders of the Telluride Mushroom Festival. So excited to learn more about Gary in the future. And again, thank you, MMS, thank you, NAMA. It was an amazing experience and definitely recommend it. If anyone gets the chance to go, please go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Awesome. I'm just going to put a couple links here in the chat. Again, you don't have to be a member of NAMA to be up to date on what's going on. A lot of people join NAMA to go on the Foray. So it's sort of a reason to join NAMA. There's a lot of webinars and stuff going on. I'm going to do one more quick share. This is every year at NAMA, they share at the end of the final keynote, they share where the event is going to be the following year. So here's, whoops, god dang it. I'm going to escape here. I'm just going to go to the end here. It wants to start over. You guys can see that. Next year, August 27th through 30th in Marquette, Michigan, which is right here in the Upper Peninsula. So about 6-ish hour drive from the Twin Cities. NAMA is looking for MMS Club to kind of co-sponsor and help. Of course, it's a little hard to be foray leaders in a place that you don't know, but we should know some of the species. We definitely could help as identifiers. We could do some workshops. So I don't have much more info except for the date and the location. So more to come on that. The only kind of bummer about the NAMA Foray is that it's right when we do our state fair display, which is a really huge thing that we do every year. And I think a lot of people have come to know us because of that display. A lot of people have volunteered and had a great time. But again, NAMA hosts usually about 300 people at the Foray, and our club has about 1,200 people right now. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I think we could still support the state fair, and a lot of us can go to NAMA. So I'm hoping you guys are inspired by the really varied experiences that the different people had. Aaron, I think you were sharing some images from the Foray as well. I know you were there. There's a decent group of MMS folks there. Does anyone have any questions or comments for either of the speakers? Thanks. Well, I really, really loved how both of you experienced things that made you want to dig deeper and learn more about it. And I think even learning more about it at home. Oh, Presley, I have that book and I'm happy to loan it to you. That was
Oh, great.
one of the first forays I went on for NAMA was that Santa Cruz one back in 2012. And it was Dorothy Beebe was teaching the class. She was the person who used to work really closely with Miriam Rice. And remember, it was freezing here, so it was super fun to go somewhere warm. And I registered for the pre-foray 8-hour dye class. And the day before the dye class, we went to the ocean and I got to see tidal pools. And I was like, I can't go sit in a class for 8 hours. There's just no way I can go sit in a class and dye yarn when I could be at the ocean at the tidal pools. But I went to the class and then you could not drag me away from that class. I found it so fascinating. And I love to hear more of the background of it, that the paper making was invented actually because, you have all this mass left over from the dyeing. And then actually last year was the first time ever I learned about the fluorescence of the dyer's polypore. And if you guys look, there's some groups online on Facebook. It's like Mushroom Dyers Facebook page. And the person who was presenting out there is Sydney Ober Singleton. And he took the dyer's polypore and he pulverized it so fine. And then boiled it and added some thickener to it. And then he put it in a syringe, a lot like henna. And we drew all over our bodies with it. And it just touches your skin or your fingernails or your hair for a little bit. And the fluorescent bit stays. So you wash it off and there's no yellow on your hands or brown. And then when you put the UV light on it, you're totally glowing in the dark, so it's kind of mushroom ravers that night. But yeah, it's fascinating how when you think you know something, there's always so much more to learn. And I love seeing it through other people's eyes and being introduced to different things. And yeah, loved hearing about your experiences. And I'm really proud that people are having these experiences in honor of one of our members who used to love to do that as well. So are there any other, I'm looking at the, let's see. Tell us more about the regional foray in British Columbia. Oh, that is a good question. Let me see. I don't know if it's on the NAMA website yet. But let me take a peek. I think if you went to the Instagram page, I know they announced the logo contest. So there might be more info in that space about it. So I'm just going to take a quick peek here. It's called Win a Ticket to Attend 2026 Regional Foray, officially named Simicameen Valley Forest and Foray and Feast with the Vancouver Mycological Society, June 1st to 4th, 2026, British Columbia, Canada. Logo contest deadline is midnight on October 31st, which is the exact same deadline as our photo contest. Here, I'm going to put a link here.
So turn your photos in first.
I'm going to actually go to this link really quick and see where it brings us. All right, so that's a link to the contest, which gives the name and the date of the foray, but it looks like, and if you go to the NAMA website, if you went under event, there's annual foray, regional foray. Actually, I don't know, is this lame if I had to share my screen again? Do people like being shown through websites, or is that lame? So here's the NAMA page. Here's the there you go. Regional foray. I will copy and paste that and put it in there. But if you went to events, you can see there's annual foray, regional foray, Mexico, a calendar, a list of the past forays, and then other upcoming stuff, webinars and book club. Let's see what's under regional foray. So right now is the one that's happening in just a couple weeks, this Oregon Dunes foray. So my guess is when this foray is done, they will update this, the regional foray part of the website to have the British Columbia foray. But also if you go to publications and you went to Mica file, these are really, there's just lots of great info in these, lots and lots of great info. There's always sort of a club feature, affiliate club feature. There's always recaps of the forays, info about upcoming events. So definitely sort of bringing your mushroom club membership to the next level. And yeah, like you guys said, Presley, I'm so excited that you met people from New York and are working on projects with them. I think that Santa Cruz foray that you that I was saying I did the dyeing workshop at, I met a friend that I've been visiting at least once a year for the last 12 years. I actually got to meet Gary Linkoff and his wife at that foray as well. So I know Courtney, for you to get to see Noah Siegel. When I was at the Santa Cruz foray, Noah Siegel was very young, and now he's like this really acclaimed mycologist, has written all these books. So yeah, it's quite the community. All right, does anyone have any other questions or anything they want to share while we're all together? Yeah.
One thing I thought of that it's a slightly off topic, but we often are mentioning this is on the website and that's on the website. And don't be intimidated by that, because we have a search bar in the upper right corner next to the non-working sign-in section. That's a future feature. But the search bar actually works really well. So you can just put in there whatever it is you're looking for, and it'll give you a list of your options for where to go. So I encourage you to try that out.
Yeah, and if you haven't visited our new website, please do. It's really beautiful. Here's the search bar Heather was talking about. And our upcoming events, it's, all the info you need. There's usually links to maps, dates, stuff about the photo contest. So it's really a rich site. Well, thanks again, everyone.